The act of recreational fishing for more than human animal bodies as a form of entertainment is an accepted and popular form of human-animal recreational tourist activity. While whole human family members gather on shores or on boats, often with food, drink, and of course fishing equipment, ready for a fun day out of family bonding through this ritualized, normalized, often fiercely defended activity, directly aims to result in more than human animal injury or death. The targeted more than humans may be part of a species-specific family, but also part of a multi-species family where bonds have taken time and effort to develop. Would you even consider this shark as belonging to a family when looking at this photo? In September 2020, a newspaper article reported how an American family holidaying in the Bahamas had caught, killed, cooked, and eaten a shark. Their act was visually documented on their personal social media account, boasting of the size of this and another shark they had caught but failed to land a few days prior. With a confessed and deliberate intention, they sought out a shark to catch, kill, eat, and brag about. When the post was brought to the attention of the Bahamian authorities and reported to the police for violating environmental laws, the family matriarch responded, "I am a firm believer, if you consume what you catch and it's not endangered and within the law, then it is completely what we were created to do, forage for food in some ways." This statement will possibly strike you as it did me, doubling down on their activity as not only a norm, but an essential act, a right as a human to kill to survive. A caveat is put in place by the matriarch. The killing must be legal and the body caught not endangered. She wields an authoritative statement as a preventative move for further questioning or any request for remorse. In an arguable attempt at claiming victimhood, the matriarch goes on to say how the cost of food in the Bahamas was so expensive, the family of 6 needed to catch food in order to survive their holiday, 2,500 kilometers from their home. And honestly, as expensive as groceries are on the island with a family of 6, we are trying to catch as much as we can to actually eat lobster, fish, and now shark, she defends. While a flurry of online responses condemned the family's act, highlighting the privilege, entitlement, and arrogance that the statements contain, and referring to the illegality, the endangered category of the sharks, and an entanglement of perceived power and privilege imbalances between the citizens of 2 cultures and countries, it struck me how any one of these sharks could so easily be one of the sharks in Christina Zanato's Shiver family. This presentation is part of a series of rhizomatically developing thoughts while studying for my PhD. There may be no punchline conclusion presented, but simply an attempt to structure a collection of observations while going through the iterative process of putting thought to paper. I hope you find this presentation of some interest. While the touristing American family illegally fished, cooked, and ate the shark on their vacation home barbecue, it is unlikely any thought was given to the shark as being a member of a shiver, even less that the shark may have been a member of a multi-species family, especially one that included a human. Christina Zanato has spent the last 30 years diving with and co-forming relationships with a shiver of sharks. Sharks that arguably ask her to remove hooks from their bodies, and sharks she cannot trace when they disappear. This presentation considers how the anthropocentric attitudes of human animal families completely dismiss the trauma brought on their more than human targets and the families within which they reside. As part of a larger project on shark-human relationships, this presentation further examines and questions how recreational fishing tourists and their family bonding tourist activities can impact, unravel, and destroy human-shark kinship bonds. While recreational fishing is deemed as entertainment, relaxing, peaceful, or a right for humans, the consequences to their prey is deemed by those that partake in the activity as insignificant collateral damage in an activity we humans claim to have a right to conduct. Furthermore, while we condemn more than human animals that we judge as catching prey for entertainment, think of companion animal cats, for example, We often fail to spotlight the same kind of judgment upon ourselves. Neither do most of us think about atypical more than human animal family cohesion, destruction, or grief encountered due to recreational fishing. Maybe such a thought is too overwhelming or insignificant for us to consider. While we still may not be in a space ready to consider the breakup of more unusual multi-species families, perhaps as we are accused of anthropomorphism, or the thought is beyond our boundaries of more than human animals worthy of consideration, the grief of humans losing companion more than human animal family members is becoming less taboo. While the concept and definition of the human family is constantly evolving and family members may no longer be readily constituted of biological or institutionally related members, the research on multi-species families was scant until the late 1980s. Irvine has questioned what constitutes a family, how a more than human animal becomes family, and she states that families are and always have been constituted as more than human. Irvine goes on to explain how Hickrod and Schmidt built upon Goffman's 1974 concept of keying to explain how more than human animals transition to becoming a family member. According to a 2016 survey, the most popular pet globally is the dog, followed by cats, fish, then birds. However, such surveys on pets or companion animals are based on more than human animals sharing a physical home with a human. And for Hickrod and Schmidt, the process of becoming family starts when a pet enters a human home. A problematic concept when a traditional home may not exist, but a multi-species family nevertheless does. While a home, of course, could be defined in a multitude of ways to fit Hickrod and Schmidt's first transitional phase, what of situations where more than human animal-human relationships have developed a level of kinship where the bonded members become family without any physical space being able to be defined as a human home? What about where a more than human animal cannot exist with a human in a mutually defined home? Does this make the idea of bonded members being family any less important? Zanato has spent 30 years scuba diving the same locations in the Bahamas, and through this repeated activity, a series of relationships have been co-formed between Zanato and shark individuals. This multi-species family rendezvous on the ocean floor. As Caribbean reef sharks and nurse sharks can live up to 15 years, the compassion and concern that have developed with these relationships over several years has led Zanato to consider the sharks as kin, as family. Just as strong human-human bonds create feelings of apprehension, guardianship, and protection over kin, such feelings are felt by Zanato over the shiver of sharks who consent to her presence, affection, and care practices. Zanato and the sharks become family within the liminal space and time made possible through scuba diving, the only zone within which the relationships can physically co-form and develop. The sharks can only go home with Christina in her mind and emotional connections. She cannot stay on the ocean floor beyond a diving rendezvous. Is this space to be considered a home made of fluid, fragile, dissipating moments in time? For the moment, regardless of my questions, just as she considers the dog she lives with as part of her multi-species family, Zanato considers the sharks just as much family as her dogs, and both make companion species knots in her heart. Authors now write about disenfranchised grief, which, as Hearn describes, are feelings of loss which are not recognised or socially validated, and write how society has begun to create spaces and mechanisms for people to mark and grieve the loss of more than human animals that were significant to them while living and beyond. However, while dogs and cats are firmly accepted into the worth grieving for category of more than human animals, some societies are beginning to accept humans may grieve for other species. Birds, guinea pigs, hamsters, rats, jumping spiders, and some reptiles are examples of some of the other species creeping into the fringes. Fish have started to make the grade of being grievable too. Being grievable is borrowed from Judith Butler, who talks of being grievable in terms of humans, meaning those whose lives are eligible to be grieved and whether their deaths will be marked or mourned. It may seem odd for anyone to find a shark eligible for being grievable. However, someone who thinks sharks are most definitely eligible to be grieved is Christina Zanardo, who has already lost some of her Shiver family over the 30 years she has been diving with them. One of the hardest things she tells me is not getting to say goodbye. While some sharks Christina has watched deteriorate from suspected cancers, others have simply not returned to the dive site. Christina talks of how there are no goodbyes with the sharks. She doesn't know when she sees them whether it may be the last time. She wishes she had an answer, even if she could just find them dead, she says. In the meantime, she continues to look out into the blue. One of the significant relationship building aspects of Zanardo and the sharks' bondings is through hook removal. She has removed over 300 hooks from the bodies of sharks in the Shiver family, many of which have had hooks removed multiple times. She shows me a box given to her in China, which is full of hooks. She calls this the box of hope. Each of these hooks have been removed by Zanardo from a shark in the Shiver family. While some sharks are hooked in their sensitive gills, some are hooked in the mouth, and others have hooks which reach the stomach and cannot be removed. Who is fishing these sharks and where? She doesn't know. The sharks are not tracking tagged and hooks not marked. Can the oceanic family home possibly be considered to be in a rough neighbourhood? Regularly diving with sharks is a privilege Zanardo recognises and treasures. To access the liminal home requires scuba diving, and to do so regularly and frequently, a great deal of effort to organise. Funds, logistics, and the maintenance of a healthy body fit for scuba diving are all essential. Trigger warning for the next 2 slides. There'll be images of dead sharks. As such, a casual, illegal, unthoughtful, touristic day of fishing entertainment which destroys a shark body has the repercussions of concern, worry, grief, and no goodbyes. As mentioned, with more than human companion animal deaths, the human bonded family member may experience disenfranchised grief. But at least some societies recognise the loss is grievable. But what of a shark? It's only a shark. We kill between 63 and 273 million a year, while 57 human lives were lost in 2022 through shark encounters. Shark bites upon humans are categorised as attacks and divided between provoked and unprovoked. These words ooze with judgment and biopower. Alternatively, the term family recreational fishing paints a picture of peace, serenity, or fun and sunshine-filled party days where family bonds grow. Recording of fish deaths make no mention of human attacks, provoked or not. O'Brien tells us that tourism is currently underpinned by the Western capitalist economic system, resulting in the commodification of various elements in a tourist destination and creating competition amongst all actors involved. Abdullah explains how the more than human animal is disempowered in the tourist experience, as the more than human animal doesn't enter the experience due to his or her own free will. Power and public perception are interconnected and reinforce marginalization in tourism destinations, he says. This interconnection and marginalization is reflected in a US Department of Commerce National Marine Fisheries Department report that states recreational anglers landed 2,090 metric tons of sharks in 2013 and 1,504 metric tons in 2014, equating to 297,000 and 239,000 individual sharks on average for each year, respectively. Those numbers include catch and release, of which there is no data on survival rate, injuries sustained, nor psychological damage suffered by the shark individuals. Furthermore, these figures are based on reported landings with no leeway given for sharks caught by and illegally discarded by recreational anglers. Recreational anglers as a whole land more sharks than commercial fisheries in the USA. Indeed, these figures do not include people who catch sharks illegally and under the radar, which the American family in question would have been if they hadn't taken their supposed prowess to social media. Trigger warning is now over. While the American tourist family who fished for the Bahamian sharks probably forgotten about or laugh about this story on another fishing day out, someone, human or more than human, somewhere might not be so lightly affected. In the meantime, Grandma, shown in this photo, is late to the dive again. This concludes 15 minutes on my current thoughts on this element of my project. I hope it has left you with some contemplations. Thank you.